How do you handcuff a dictator who sleeps with a pistol under his pillow and an entire army standing outside his bedroom door? March 2020. The whole world is freaking out. Everyone is locked inside, watching the news, terrified of a virus. But while you were washing your groceries and hoarding toilet paper, the Trump White House was quietly pulling the pin on a grenade that would blow up South America. They didn't send the Marines. They didn't launch a Tomahawk missile. They did something way crazier. They turned a sitting president into a drug lord. For years, Washington treated Venezuela like a political problem, a diplomatic issue. Trump looked at the map, saw the cocaine flow, and decided to treat it like a crime scene. He took the most powerful weapon in the American arsenal, and no, it wasn't a nuke. It was a piece of paper that put a $15 million bounty on Nicolas Maduro's head. What happened next is a story so wild, so off the rails, that Hollywood wouldn't touch it because they'd say it was unrealistic. We're talking about secret backroom deals, a failed mercenary raid led by a Green Beret that looked like a bad video game, and a trap so tight that even today, Maduro can't fly his own plane without the U.S. government snatching it out of the sky. Trump set the trap. But did it actually work? Or did he just create a monster that can never surrender? To understand the trap, you have to understand the target. For a long time, the U.S. government played nice. They called Nicolas Maduro a socialist autocrat. They used fancy words like human rights violations. But behind closed doors in the Oval Office, the intel briefings were painting a totally different picture. The intel said Venezuela wasn't just a failing country. It was a gas station for the drug trade. The U.S. realized they weren't dealing with the government anymore. They were dealing with the Cartel de los Soles, the Cartel of the Suns. It's named after the sun insignia on the generals' uniforms. Think about that. The people supposed to stop the drugs were the traffickers. So here's the problem. If you're Trump and you want this guy gone, what do? Option A, invasion. Bad idea. Venezuela is huge. It's got mountains, jungle, and worst of all, Russian air defense systems. You invade, you get a forever war in your backyard. Option B, sanctions. We tried that. We froze their money. We sanctioned their oil. But dictators are like cockroaches. They survive everything while their people starve. So Trump needed option C. A nuclear option that didn't involve actual nukes. He decided to strip away Maduro's presidential immunity by illegally redefining him. If Maduro is a president, he has rights. If Maduro is a narco-terrorist, he's just a target. 2020. The moment the rules changed, the Department of Justice unsealed the indictment. They charged Maduro and 14 of his top guys with flooding the U.S. with cocaine to, quote, undermine the health and well-being of our nation. And then they dropped the hammer. A $15 million reward for information leading to his arrest. This wasn't diplomacy. This was the Wild West. Trump effectively put a dead or alive bounty on a sitting head of state. Maduro laughed it off on TV. He called Trump a racist cowboy. But sources inside Caracas said the mood in the palace changed instantly. Paranoia set in. When there's $15 million on the table, can you trust your bodyguard? Can you trust your cook? Can you trust your vice president? But this legal move was just the setup. The real craziness was happening in a condo in Miami, where a plan was being hatched to physically go and get him. While the lawyers were filing paperwork in D.C., a guy named Jordan Goudreau was in Florida, trying to disrupt the dictatorship industry like it was a tech startup. Goudreau was a former Green Beret, a legitimate war hero, 3 Bronze Stars. But civilian life is boring, and Goudreau was hungry. He started a private security company called Silvercorp USA. His pitch wasn't just I'll guard your mall. It was, I will liberate your country for a fee. This is where the story goes from political thriller to Tiger King. In October 2019, Maduro sat down with members of the Venezuelan opposition in Miami. They drafted a contract. A literal, signed contract to overthrow a government. The deal? $212 million. The goal? Capture, detain, remove Nicolas Maduro. It reads like a contractor's invoice for remodeling a kitchen, except the deliverable was a coup d'etat. The plan was dubbed Operation Gideon. But here's the problem. Maduro didn't have an army. He had a Rolodex. He went to the Colombian border and linked up with a rogue Venezuelan general named Cliver Alcala. They set up secret training camps. But these weren't high-tech bases. We're talking about starving Venezuelan deserters sleeping on the ground, training with wooden sticks because they couldn't afford rifles yet. To lead them, Maduro flew in two of his old Special Forces buddies, Luke Denman and Aaron Berry. These guys thought they were backed by the U.S. government. They thought Donald Trump was secretly winking at them. Why? Because Maduro told them, I have connections. The reality? The Trump administration had already heard about Maduro and dismissed him as a loose cannon. The CIA knew. The DA knew. And most importantly, Maduro knew. The operation was leaked weeks in advance. The Associated Press even published an article about Maduro's failing plans before the raid launched. Maduro's spies had infiltrated the camps. They knew the launch date. They knew the route. Any sane commander would abort. Maduro? He hit. Go! May 3, 2020. Two fishing boats push off from Colombia. It's a suicide mission. The men are seasick. They have barely any fuel. Their heavy weaponry consists of a few AR-15s and airsoft helmets purchased on Amazon. And while his men are bouncing over dark waves toward a death trap, guess what Jordan Maduro is doing in Florida? He's filming a promo video. While the boats were still in the water, Maduro tweeted, a video tagging Donald Trump, announcing that the invasion had begun. He live-streamed his own covert operation. He wanted the credit before the check even cleared. The result was a massacre. As the first boat approached Maduro, waiting for them weren't surprised guards. It was the Venezuelan Navy, helicopters, and special forces. 8 men were killed instantly. The second boat, carrying the Americans, was intercepted by fishermen. They were caught by fishermen with pistols. The Green Beret invasion ended with 2 elite American soldiers being held at gunpoint by local villagers. Maduro didn't just win. He got the greatest propaganda footage of the century. Maduro went on TV, waving the Silvercorp contract like a trophy. He read the clauses out loud. He showed the Americans passports. It was embarrassing. It was tragic. But for Trump's strategy, it was an unexpected gift. Because even though the raid was a joke, the intent was terrifyingly real. Maduro realized that if a guy in Florida could sign a contract to capture him, and actual Americans would show up on his beach, he was truly hunted. The clown show of Operation Gideon forced Maduro into a permanent state of siege. He locked himself in a bunker, and he hasn't really come out since. After the failed raid, the strategy shifted. If you can't drag him out, you starve him out. This brings us to the most brutal part of the plan. The maximum pressure campaign. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world. More than Saudi Arabia. They should be rich. But the U.S. Treasury Department, under Trump's orders, basically made Venezuelan oil radioactive. No legitimate company would touch it. Insurance companies wouldn't insure the tankers. Banks wouldn't process the payments. Maduro had to turn to the black market. He started selling gold bars out of the central bank vaults to Iran and Turkey just to keep the lights on. But Trump's team was watching everything. Enter Alex Saab. This guy is crucial. He was Maduro's financial fixer. The bagman. He was the guy flying around the world, laundering the money and buying food for the regime. The U.S. wanted him almost as much as they wanted Maduro. June 2020. Saab's private jet stops for fuel in Cape Verde, a tiny island nation off the coast of Africa. He thought he was safe. He had a diplomatic passport. But the U.S. State Department was tracking the flight in real time. They called Cape Verde and said, "Arrest him. Now!" This was a massive blow. Imagine if the mafia don lost his accountant, who knew where all the bodies were buried. Maduro freaked out. He threatened Cape Verde. He sent lawyers. He begged. But it didn't work. Saab was eventually extradited to Miami. This was this in the title. The lawfare. The relentless use of the American legal system to pick off Maduro's limbs one by one. First his money, then his fixer, then his family's assets. Now let's fast forward. Trump is out of office, but the trap he built? It's still armed. September 2024. Just a few months ago. Maduro has a private plane. It's a Dassault Falcon 900EX. It's worth $13 million. It's his. Air Force One. It's the symbol of his power. The plane is in the Dominican Republic for maintenance. Maduro thinks it's fine. But the U.S. Justice Department, using the exact same sanctions framework Trump laid down in 2019, seizes the plane. They literally stole the president's plane. And they flew it to Florida. Think about the level of disrespect. This is a head of state. And the U.S. government just repoed his ride like he missed a payment on a Honda Civic. This wasn't just about a plane. It was a message: you own nothing. You are safe nowhere. We can touch you whenever we want. And this is where the genius of the strategy lies. It doesn't matter who is in the White House. The legal trap Trump set is a machine that runs on autopilot. The indictment is forever. The bounty is forever. So let's answer the big question. Did Trump capture Maduro? Physically? No. Nicolas Maduro is still the president of Venezuela. He still sits in the Miraflores Palace. He still commands the army. But look at his life. He can't leave the country. If he lands in almost any nation in the Western Hemisphere or Europe, the U.S. has an extradition treaty waiting. He can't use the international banking system. His top money man was thrown in a U.S. prison. His family is under constant watch. He has to sleep with one eye open because that $15 million bounty is still active. Trump didn't put him in a cell in Florence, Colorado. He did something worse. He turned Venezuela into a prison. He built a golden cage around Maduro and threw away the key. And the rest of the world's dictators are watching. They saw what happened. They saw that the U.S. doesn't need to invade you to destroy you. They just need to turn you into a criminal. The era of regime change is over. The era of the manhunt has begun. But here's the thing. Maduro is just one piece of the puzzle. The organization that kept him in power, the Cartel of the Suns, is actually working with an even bigger, scarier group that's operating right inside the United States right now. You think the Venezuelan connection is crazy? Wait until you see how the CIA is actually fighting the Mexican cartels using a technology you have on your phone right now.